Hi, it's Tim Bend at Oxford University Press. I'm pleased to be here today to introduce Laura Engelstein, whose book on the Russian Revolution will be publishing in October. Russia in Flames: War, Revolution, and Civil War. So my first question is, in this anniversary year, what exactly are we commemorating?
We are commemorating a world historical event, an event that changed the shape of politics and our conception of society for the whole rest of the 20th century. This revolution came out of the First World War, which was a cataclysmic event, which also had an enormous impact on the future of Europe and of the world. The result of the revolution and civil war, which lasted altogether 7 years, was to create a new kind of society, a new kind of political regime, a socialist state and a socialist society, or self-proclaimed socialist state. And the Soviet Union lasted until 1991. For most of my lifetime, this was an existing state, an existing system. It had a very powerful ideology. It attracted supporters and enthusiasts all over the world. This was really a game-changing event. It was very bloody, it was very brutal, very political, and also it involved an enormous landmass. The Russian Empire in 1914 was 1/6 of the Earth's land surface. It was not just Russian as we think of it today, Russian speaking, Russian Orthodox, Slavic. It had an enormous periphery. It was literally an empire. And my book has the virtue of not only going from the beginning of the war all the way through the collapse of one regime, the struggle to create a new regime, the brutal fighting between different camps with different visions of the past and the future, but also it takes very seriously the fact that it wasn't just one revolution, that all of the component parts of the existing Russian Empire with Nicholas II as the Tsar had their own revolutions, which were intertwined but also separate. So you had a Finnish revolution, a Polish revolution, a Ukrainian revolution. There were revolutions in the Caucasus, on the Crimea, in Central Asia, in Siberia, all the way to the Chinese border. So this is a massive story. It's very hard. It was hard to write a book that had so many dimensions and so many intertwined stories.
When we first started talking about the book, you made very clear to me that you thought this was a morality tale without a moral. That there are no good guys and no bad guys. Everybody's mixed. There's ideologues and idealists. There's revolutionaries and counter-revolutionaries. There's anti-Semites and philo-Semites. You have the whole range of human experience. Mm-hmm. But as I finished working with you, I had the sense nonetheless that October 1917 did focus somehow on what was lost. It commemorated an opportunity or a moment in which the good guys could have won or something good could have happened and didn't. Did your own thinking about that change over the course of writing?
I think it's important to note this, that even under the conditions of the Russian autocracy, there was something of a civil society. Because otherwise we fall into a trap of thinking, oh, Russia, there is something innately, genetically wrong with Russian culture. And I just want to say that Russia is part of the human race. It's one, and the possibility for change, for evolution, for development has to be recognized. I don't want to say that that outcome was likely. Under the conditions of revolution, civil war, the World War I, some authoritarian variation probably would have prevailed, not necessarily the Bolsheviks. This was not happening on an island. The foreign powers, it was an international event, and there was intervention and meddling and mingling from the outside. So Germany, when the war was still on, had a big impact. As everyone knows, or many people know, and big deal has been made out of this, the reason Lenin made it back into Russia in time to start leading his party was that the Germans facilitated his entry, thinking that they were going to help destroy the Russian Empire from within, and they did. Germans occupied a vast proportion of Russian territory during the First World War. The infamous Peace of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918, by which the Bolsheviks concluded a separate peace, withdrawing from their alliance with France and Britain, had an enormous impact, an impact on the war, and an impact on the outcome of the Russian Revolution. The French, Americans, the Japanese intervened, sent troops, landed on Russian territory to try to influence the outcome. So this was a very complex event, which was immediately understood as having worldwide repercussions. So again, just to add to the complexity of the story that has to be told and the forces involved. So what I try to do in the book is to bring together the story of politics and decision making in parties and ideology with a broader scope in two senses. A broader scope socially and culturally of all the masses of people, the peasants, the nomads, the city dwellers, the people on the frontier, the people in the provinces, the people in the capital cities, and how they mobilize in their own way with the geographical sweep. So a social sweep and a geographical sweep. And I'm not sure I succeeded. There's a lot going on here. There are a lot of balls in the air. But it's the kind of massive historical event where you can't just play with one ball. So with the help of my editors at Oxford and with many conversations with Tim and some of my colleagues, tried to say something new about a story that's been told many times. And one of the things that enables a historian to be a little bit new in 2017, 100 years later, is that the Soviet Union did collapse in 1991, and the control over information and sources suddenly was loosened. So we have had the opportunity to access new documents, new material, and also have a new perspective on the past that we didn't have while the Soviet Union was still in place.